I'm Mary Lyons, and I am the Wealth Woman.
And I'm Eric Alexander from Benchmark Income Group.
And this is the Big Wealth Podcast.
Everything you've ever been taught about money is wrong.
But don't worry, we're here to help.
On this podcast, we'll use the same tools you already know to actually help set you free.
Free to do what you want with your time, with your money, and with your energy. Free to live your life the way you have dreamt about.
So we're going to talk about wealth knowledge, personal reflections, and the financial industry news of the day.
Welcome to Today we have a very special guest with us. We have Mr. Jason Sanger, who is one of my personal favorite people to talk to, because every time I talk to him, I learn something new about what we do for our clients. He is the original creator of the Wealth Building Cornerstones software program, which is the primary software program we use when we are talking to our clients. Jason, I cannot tell you how excited I am that you are here with us today.
I'm excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Great, awesome. So I'm going to start with an easy softball question for you. And maybe you're going to look at it and be like, no, that's not so easy as you think. But I want to know, how did you come up with the software? What brought you to the point in time where you said, you know what, I need to make this? What happened? Tell me all the backstory.
Sure, yeah. So I entered the industry from coming in from the engineering angle. I used to be an engineer out of schooling and stuff like that. So when I came into the industry, I really had to wrap my head around why we were doing things in this industry, whether we were buying investments or insurance or what it might be, and what the real purpose was. And so part of the system is always begin with the purpose in mind and make sure you're measuring the actual objective. And so that was kind of the impetus of this, where I went on a little bit of a kind of investigative journey to figure out what the purpose of the savings we were all doing was, why we were doing it, how it had to work later on for everybody. And it really culminates in a discussion about retirement income planning and realizing that the things we're all doing, saving for retirement, really have one main objective, which is to create retirement income potential down the road. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's kind of started. And then we work backwards from there into how we have and what we have on all the system here today.
So tell me a little bit about building that, because I know there are other people kind of involved in the process and certain things that happened along the way that helped you know you're really on the right track. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it started with kind of looking at historical perspective on how retirement incomes have worked in society for a very long time. And that there was a seismic shift that occurred in the 1980s from a planning perspective for everybody. So it used to be, prior to the 1980s, everybody had a kind of a salary or compensation package from their employer that also included a retirement income plan that was guaranteed, which is a pension plan.
Right.
So the vast majority of people had pension plans as their retirement income plan. A pension plan guarantees retirement income for somebody at the day they retire for life. So employees never had to think about retirement income planning that at large. In the 1980s, everything kind of shifted, where the defined contribution plans that we're all familiar with today, like 401k plans, 403b plans, all those types of things came onto the marketplace. And that's all what we're living with today. And so as part of that, we said, well, what changed when this all happened? When that switch occurred, what is the fundamental core elements of a retirement income planning situation that have changed? And to do that, you have to get a little technical. You have to go back into pension plans and what we're creating the guaranteed retirement income inside of them. And at large, a pension plan is a marriage of the investment industry and the insurance industry to create the objective of retirement income. And so the investment industry was responsible for the accumulation of funds inside of that, the growth rates that are earmarked as a pot of money for everybody, every single employee on the way to retirement. And then when that employee reaches retirement, that pot of money that's earmarked for them for retirement needs to be turned into a guaranteed lifetime income stream. Well, that's where the insurance companies came in with their law of large numbers actuarial science to provide guaranteed retirement income at very high rates off of those designated pots of money. Mm-hmm. So that formula works automatically and is balanced perfectly between the investment and insurance industries when you're inside of a pension plan. Essentially in the 80s, everything opened up, meaning the pension plans kind of started to go away. And what everybody's getting by default now is just one side of the pension plan, which is the accumulation side. The investment power through our 401k type plans and things, which is something we need. But by itself, an investment plan is not a retirement income plan. And that is now coming to fruition for a lot of people down the road as they try to retire 30 years later, and needing to understand how to replace or introduce the distribution power of the insurance world back into their financial lives and balance with that investment side to create the actual objective of retirement income.
So I think you said something that was really interesting here, just in terms of, the way people would approach planning for retirement. And if you have a pension, people don't approach planning for retirement, right? And so if
it's sort of pre-built, right?
Yeah, your income's already taken care of, so you don't really have to think about it. And so I think a lot of times people think that the strategies that are being deployed today have been around for a really, really long time, right? But for the average American, that's not really true. It's a much shorter time frame that people have been planning for retirement without pensions involved in it. And I think that's part of the reason that we hear about people who are running out of money in retirement, or we find, I think the term is the sandwich generation, where now they're talking about that generation that's in the middle that has to take care of their parents because it was really the first generation that didn't have pensions. So they're taking care of their parents, trying to figure out how they're going to do this for themselves. And they're taking their parents' advice in a lot of circumstances. And maybe they even shouldn't be, because it's not relevant for the world that we live in today, right? And Eric, you have a great example when you're
where their fundamentals changed.
Yeah, where you kind of help them see what did it used to look like and what does it look like now. Will you share that just a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the conversations we always kind of have with clients is this idea of the tricycle. Like your parents or your parents' parents had tricycles. They had a savings component well, they didn't have 401s back then, but they had a savings component. Maybe it was their mattress pad or wherever they put money. And then they had Social Security, and then they had pension. So they had this really elegant model where sort of everything was working towards each other, and they were mutually exclusive. Like if I did a really bad job saving, if I bought a bunch of ice and decided to ship it down to Mexico, what could go wrong, right? Then and their investments fell apart, right? Well, then it really had no effect on their pensions or social, right? And so there was sort of self-completing and self-reinforcing, and that when you fast forward to where we are today, and I'd like to hear more of the history part of it, but we don't have that, right? Pensions are, to Jason's point, have largely gone away, and so we've got it best to bicycle, maybe unicycle for some people.
Well, I think one thing.
Yeah, you really have to.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say.
You really have to.
Here we go. The delay on.
You go.
Oh, great. So I was just gonna say the thing that we really don't think about is that when pensions started to go away and 401ks became the new vehicle, there was not a major. It's not like we got a raise so that we could now plan for our own pension. The pension just disappeared. And so that even the compensation model that most of us are working off of today was built when pensions were part of that package. And when they got taken out of the package, it's not like employers said, hey, since we're getting rid of your pension, we're going to give you a 20% raise so that you can recreate it on your own. Income stayed really remarkably the same. And they just said, oh, but we're giving you this 401k.
Yep. And that's basically what we're all tasked with today. Us three on the call here and all of our clients and every individual across the nation is to create their own retirement income plans. And a lot of people don't realize it. And I'd say the vast majority of people across the nation have investment plans, not realizing that investment plan is not an actual retirement income plan. It's only one side of a retirement income or one piece of it.
Can you say that one more time?
So everybody across the nation seems to have an investment plan, but not a retirement income plan. So what's the difference? Well, an investment plan really just takes into account accumulation, but it's not measuring the actual objective, which is creating retirement income later on. So to do that, you have to take into account both accumulation and distribution at the same time to measure the output at an assumed retirement age to say, okay, this is the path I'm on based on this retirement income planning strategy. And there's basically around 4 global retirement income planning strategies anybody could choose from. And there are different levels of efficiency. And so you lay those out and say, how does this one work? How does this one work? How does this one work? And how efficient is it? Meaning, how much income do I get out the back end of it for what I put in? And obviously, you probably want to be on the most efficient planning path. So pick the one that you want as on that basis. And this is for anybody who's in pre-retirement, 25, 35, 45, 55, 60 years old, whoever that might be, to understand what these retirement income plans are so that they can put together the investment accumulation side and the insurance distribution side together in tandem and in perfect balance to create the output thereafter. And then that is going to be used to also measure how much to save. So we always talk about the 2 questions everybody has is how much to save and where to put it for retirement income planning.
Right.
You can't measure the how much to save question. That's a volume question until you realize how efficient your retirement income plan is. Because if you have a very inefficient retirement income planning strategy, you're going to have to save a lot more money to get to the same spot later on. And so one of the keys in the education is for all the people out there is knowing what these retirement income plans globally are, how they work, what the different levels of efficiencies are, and that you can actually customize your own numbers as a hypothetical calculation that says, if I go down this path, like in a science experiment, what's my retirement income down the road, 20, 30, 10 years when I want to retire? If I do the other path, what is the output? So you can measure this stuff. It's not guesswork. And the cool part about this is that all of these strategies were developed, and these different retirement income plans were kind of acknowledged and put out there as the basis for understanding our choices. But then they were also tested by some of the top academics in the nation in white papers that have been written on our system, Wealth Building Cornerstones, that test these strategies we're talking about, the different retirement income plans against one another hundreds of thousands of times to take the academic stance on what the most efficient strategies are. So the cool part is that you can just calculate this on a customized basis for every single person out there, and they can know what their path is and answer the question of how much to save and where they want to put it for themselves, knowing how it works.
Well, and I think one of the questions that we get from clients all the time is, why haven't I heard of this before? And, what you're talking about right now, I think is so important for our audience to understand that the strategies we talk about when we talk about creating better distribution and building in efficiencies are not just some fly-by-night idea that we happen to have and we woke up one morning and said, oh, we're going to do this with clients, that it really has been tested and tried and analyzed at a very deep level. And I think that what you're talking about with all those academic resources is definitely very comforting for clients to know. But I feel like the financial services industry has been very slow to adapt some of these strategies. And I would love to get your opinion on why it's taking so long, because some of the kernels, the ideas that you have taken and built this software around have been around for, 40 plus years, I think.
Right.
At point. And
economics-based planning is not a new concept, right?
But for some reason, the big wirehouses and I'm just going to use the industry at large seems to have resistance to some of these concepts. And I'd love to get your take on that. I have my own opinions, which I'll share as well. But I would love to hear what you think in terms of why the industry is slower to make this shift.
Well, in the 1980s, kind of when this split happened regarding the pension plans opening up, all of a sudden the companies, both the investment industry and the insurance industry, started vying for dollars to make sure they were going to get them, right? It now became a competition between those two areas for the dollars that normally have been going into the pension plans that they had to share and balance. So what you saw was an either or mentality develop. And the investment industries were trying to say they could do the insurance industry's job, and the insurance industry was trying to say they could do the investment industry's job. Neither of them is very good at doing the other's job. One's good at accumulation, one's good at distribution in this discussion type platform here. But what you had was an either or mentality. So all of a sudden now, a lot of advisors out there are either only investments or only insurance. And you could be one of those, but you have to acknowledge the other side exists, not that we're trying to replace the other function of that other power. So it's not that you can't just do one, but you have to be knowing that the other side is also necessary, and planning with that baked in. But my point to that is most advisors don't take a together and approach to these two industries. These two industries both exist for a reason, right? They're multi-trillion-dollar industries. You can't look at these things and say one of them shouldn't exist.
Right.
It both exist.
Well, it's not like Bigfoot either, right? It's not like the insurance industry and the investment industry is like, well, those guys are really just like a figment of your imagination.
Right.
Right.
And you're not supposed to be making one of them do the other person's job, the other area's job. So really it comes down to putting them in the right spots and not trying to make them on a comparison basis do what they're not supposed to do. So, I think that, Mary, has been part of the issue in the industry is you have really kind of an either or mentality that was developed, and that is now working its way back out because one power of being the accumulation power of the investment industry or the distribution power of the insurance industry of actuarial science and law of large numbers, one power by itself really isn't very good at completing the picture. In fact, it's very inefficient by itself. So we talk about a teeter-totter balance where
I have to say this, right? So we're in Texas, so you have to say seesaw for our audience.
You reminded me of that
They're not
before.
going to take you seriously. Every time I hear you say that, I giggle, and it's because in Texas we say seesaw. Can you do it?
We can do it. I can do the seesaw. I can do it. But the key is that you're raining money down onto your seesaw for 40 years during pre-retirement for the purpose of retirement income generation later on. You can actually stop working. One side of that seesaw is the investment side.
You can say teeter-totter. Go for it. Just know I'm going to be giggling quietly.
Yeah, and the accumulation side of that, that's the investment side. And then the other side is the insurance distribution power side. And so you want a level teeter-totter by the end. There's an actual measurement point for how you place money during that 40 years of your pre-retirement cycle. You can measure the metric that tells you whether or not you're balanced. And if you're balanced, you get the most retirement income for the savings that you put on the teeter-totter or seesaw over that 40-year period.
Right.
And that's what you can measure. And you can measure if you're out of whack and you're kind of heavy on one side of the seesaw or the other, it reduces the retirement income potential for the savings you put in. So there's a sweet spot. Just like pension plans used to balance automatically perfectly between these two areas, we now have to do it on our own because nobody's doing it for us. It's split open. And so we got kind of off topic, Mary, and why the industry has kind of maybe been a little slower, but I think it's because you've had a very strong either or mentality.
Right.
And a lot of advisors don't want to do both together. They don't know how to put them together because they haven't thought. But the nice thing is that that's starting to change. Wealth Building Cornerstones is now getting baked into the actual curriculum for designations that advisors can get in the industry specifically for retirement income planning. And so this understanding of the two powers is starting to permeate out through the industry.
So I have a total nerd question. Sorry, Mary, to cut you off on that
because
you were about to jump in. And I have a total nerd question. This is probably not applicable for the podcast, but from it being baked into the certificates and sort of the training at that side of it, is it just stuff like RICP and RMA, or is it into broader like CFP level curriculums?
It's working its way in there as we speak in different areas. For sure in the RICP right now, the Retired Income Certified Planning degree or certificate. And then the white papers that are out there too for supporting documentation and things. And that will just continue to grow as things move forward.
And sorry for the acronym dump for everybody listening there.
Yeah.
But I think it'll get bigger. Because if people are beginning to get the education as part of their certifications and designations, that just means that more people are going to be getting good information. And I think one of the things here that's incredibly key is that it seems like right now Americans are almost trained to focus exclusively on rate of return, right? That's the accumulation rate, that's the building phase, that sort of thing. And I think some of it is just the way in general we think, right? Like if I look at planning for my daily life, I can look about a week ahead, right? And that's kind of as far as I go. And occasionally I might pull back and look a couple of months ahead. But for the most part, I don't think that we culturally think in 100-year snippets, right? And so we're looking at the thing that's right in front of us that we have to deal with right now. And sometimes I think that's why we focus on rate of return, because it's immediate and we think we'll deal with the other stuff later. And earlier you said this entire software is designed with the end goal, right, in mind. And I think it's fascinating that even as we're talking to clients that have worked with us sometimes for years, they kind of get fixated back on that rate of return conversation because that's the conversation their friends are having, as opposed to focusing on the distribution rate or the safe spending rate, and the efficiency of their plan. So how often when you're talking to people, because I know you meet with clients as well, do you find that they get almost myopically focused on that rate of return? And how do you help them see bigger picture? Is it more of the conversation around the 4 global ways? I mean, where do you take them to help them break that kind of unhelpful paradigm?
Well, it's a rut
Yeah.
to your comment the other day. It's like a mental rut. Like you just keep dragging back to that.
Yeah. Because sometimes I find even people in the meetings are like, yes, I get it. This is brilliant. And then a week goes by and you have the conversation again. And, all the connections that they made, all those new synapses that they built in the brain to understand the concept, because they didn't use it for a week, they just kind of go poof, right? They slept and the brain went back to normal. And then you almost have to kind of pull them back along.
Right. Yeah, I think there's some conditioning, obviously, that happens in just society as a normal flow of things based on what's happened over the last 30 years for some of that. And I think the first time through, it makes sense all the time to everybody, and they get it, and then they come back in, they have to be just refreshed on it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the key to that is for all of us, really be saying, what's the purpose? Because that's the measurement point. There's ancillary measurement points that are kind of subset measurement points along the way that are important, but they're not the end measurement. So that's what I said in the very beginning is you have to be measuring the correct thing because that's the objective. The objective is retirement income. So the plan that has the highest retirement income output for the savings that was put into it has the highest rate of return for the retirement income plan. So what are you measuring the return on? Because I could measure a return on something inside of the plan, but that's not the return I'm really after. It might be an important piece of the return puzzle of the full income plan. But we got to take into account accumulation and distribution together to measure the true actual objective. So I always have to circle back and say, what are we actually measuring? We're measuring this. That takes into account both the accumulation and distribution. If we only look at one side of the equation, you're going to have way less income because you're going to be out of balance. And so all of a sudden now the retirement income output is way lower in that whole area because we weren't concentrating on the efficiency of the plan. So it really just comes back to constantly always being focused on what is the actual objective we're measuring. And we do want good returns in the investment side. That's something we're always striving for. We want good performance on the insurance side. That's something we're always striving for. But we have to put those two things together. And we know the efficiencies, for example, can create even a doubling effect on retirement income for the same savings going in. If you have the most efficient retirement income plan and everything balanced, you might get $100,000 a year retirement income, let's say, with the most efficient plans. If we have an inefficient plan, like one of the least efficient you can do is like a one economic power approach, where you only use just the investment or just the insurance industry by itself, you're going to end up with like $50,000 a year for the same savings because you're only getting one power. You needed both to actually create the full effect.
I think this idea that it's really a marriage between the two industries is so key. It's the balance. It's almost like the yin and the yang, right? When you think about that, and when you said, is it in balance? I think that's such a powerful question. Is your plan in balance right now so that you have maximized or optimized your income strategies, or are you completely out of whack and maybe you don't even realize it?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the idea of the yin and the yang is the concept of order versus chaos. Right. And so to me, I look at the insurance industry as sort of order. it's actuarial science. It's boring. There's nothing really exciting about it. I think there is because I'm a nerd with it. And then you have the market, which is sort of all chaos, right? And so I think the power in the end of that is that balance between order and chaos, and that yin and yang, I think, is brilliant. And I had one sort of thought on that too, is, one of the jokes I always give clients is, yeah, I know that's giving you a bigger pot, but I don't take net worth to the grocery store. Like, I take income to the grocery store. So let's maximize that piece of it. And it takes me back to this idea that says, I don't know if it was Nietzsche or Frankl or whoever said it, but, a man with a strong enough why can bear any how. And it reminds me of this idea that says, I know I should be thinner. I want to be thinner and better looking, healthier, right? I gave up on being taller a long time ago. And I know that to do that, I've got to eat less and work out more, right? But I don't always know what that is, how much less, how much more. And I think when I think about retirement, I know I should be saving more. Like, if I put myself in the client's shoes, because I'm a product of the product, right? I'm my own client, which is a horrible way to do that. I should have Mary be my advisor. I know I should be saving more, but I think for the first time in my tenure here is now I have a number of how much more I should be saving. Because before it's like I should be saving more, but then if something comes across my screen, it's like, buy this thing, and it's like, it's only X dollars, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'll go do that, because I don't have any concrete math that says, hey, that $100, that $200, that means $4,000 a year at retirement. And again, are you willing to give up the 200 for the 4,000? But if I don't have any connection between what the consequence of the action is, I'm going to lose that game, right? The baby ducks nibbling at my feet are going to get the priority versus the long-term planning. And so I think the cool thing for clients is they get to go in and measure that. Because I've had a number of those conversations, like, okay, look, if you saved another $500 a month, what does that get you? And then you can make the value decision on whether that's worth it to you or not. But before, they didn't have that choice. They didn't have that measurement tool.
You got to be able to measure the choices you make today and the impact those have on the future. You have to make that connection, I think, is what you're saying. You have to know, if I save this amount of money and I place it this way, here's the effect in 20 years when I want to retire, or whenever that is. So you actually have definition to that. Because all of us are kind of striving to have a smooth transition, I think, between pre-retirement lifestyle and the future retirement lifestyle. But nobody knows how to quantify that because they're not measuring their retirement income plans. They're not actually measuring the outputs. And so once you have an efficient plan and you know the structure of that, then you can say, okay, the volume. Now, how much do I put in? Because I want to try to balance this, or maybe I'm okay with having less retirement income. Whatever balance somebody wants, they can actually know that now as the results. Because the balance between pre-retirement and retirement is a simple function of how much are you saving annually during pre-retirement. So whatever is left over is your lifestyle then in pre-retirement. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to quantify that, and you want to know what that transition looks like. And if you're not happy with it because there's a cliff dive at retirement where your projected retirement income is only 40% of your current lifestyle in pre-retirement, maybe you're willing to say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna shift some of this now 20 years out to make that transition smoother for myself later on, or whatever transition you want as a client or a person, you can make happen because you can measure it.
Well, to the point of measuring, I remember years ago, I won't say how many because then I'm just going to feel old. But years ago, when I was first introduced to the software, before you guys built it up and made it look pretty, but when you were just having some of the calculators, I remember hearing you guys speak at a conference I was at, I think in Hawaii. And you did kind of a little demo, and I was like, oh, I'm sold on this. And I immediately went up to the podium, signed up, wrote my little check, got the software. And then I came back to Dallas, and I'll admit, even I do this way because I like to think I'm innovative and that I'm looking for newer, better ways to do things. And here I was handed that thing. I bought into it, and it probably took me another year before I started using the software. And I remember that kind of the way I transitioned to it was I got a phone call, and our broker dealer said,
yeah, but I remember that transition that she talked about. I remember her kind of going through that process, and she was excited when she got back, and then it kind of sat on the shelf for a little bit. And I remember having that conversation, like, what is going on with that software? What were you doing with that? She's like, I don't know. I need to go dust it off. And then I think we both had some internal resistance to like, yeah, but we've been doing person A, person B for so long. Do we really need, that we've been doing sort of a different, same concept, but a different sort of methodology to get there. Is this really worth it? Is this really is this as much as cool as we think it is, or is it's touted belief? So I think there was definitely a transition on that side of it mentally.
Well, so I think I'm back, and hopefully I won't get cut off again. I am having a heck of a time today because my internet is not functioning properly. And of course, it's going to happen right in the middle of this call. It's been working fine all morning. But here's the thing, right? I mean, I think this speaks a little bit to that same question on paradigm, where you get used to thinking about things in a certain way. And then when you're asked to change the way you're thinking, it's going to take work. And so it's easier to just not deal with it. And that's basically what I did for a year. And then I came to hear you speak, and you started teaching and going through the calculators. And one thing that did happen that made me feel really good about myself is I was in a room with more than 100 other advisors, right, that had all gathered to hear you speak. And listening to some of the questions those other advisors were asking, I was like, oh man, this is where people are getting their advice. Like these guys don't know the difference between rate of return and a distribution rate. Like that's not that hard of a concept. So like I got a little like pat on the back, like I'm doing okay here. But at some point, as you were kind of dealing with the minutiae and having some conversations with some of the other advisors on topics that I was like, no, I've got that. I know what that is. I started messing around in the calculator. And so I started putting my own numbers into the calculators. And, I had pieces of the puzzle that I had already acquired, and in, not always the perfect ratios or amounts. But when I saw the difference that it was going to make to my income in retirement, I had this moment where it was like everything just exploded. And I was like, why haven't I had this conversation with every single person I know? And it kind of lit a fire under me that when I came back, I was like, okay, I'm going to make the transition to this. And if I'm being honest, I really struggled in conveying the information to clients for probably the first 6 months, maybe even 9 months that I was using this, because I'm not a natural salesperson, not a fabulous salesperson. And so it took me a while to understand how to teach the concepts, even after I understood how powerful they were. But now I feel like I wake up every morning and my job is basically, and I'm going to say this and compliance isn't going to like it, but I frequently feel like my job is to call people and ask them if they want extra money, right? And so any call reluctance that I had before just disappeared because I can materially and definitively show the people that we're talking to, here's the path you're on. And if you save exactly the same amount of money, but you change where you're putting it so that you're incorporating both financial powers, here's how much extra money you get. And this is what it means each year. Here's what it means over your lifetime. And oh, by the way, when you incorporate both sides of this, you have the potential that you can leave behind a bunch more money. So it's not either I spend money or I give my money to my kids. Now I even get to do both. And to me, that's so exciting because I like to have my cake and eat it too. Why would you not if you can?
Well, Jason, you talk about that quite a bit. And at the beginning, I think Mary's right. We get dorked out, and I think that's the proper term. We get dorked out on the income differential, right? It's a difference engine at a basic level. Like if you do A, this is what you get. If you do B, this is what you get. Do you want A or B? And I think we get sort of excited about the income differential, but you always talk about this idea of the waterfall at retirement. And I think once people understand the waterfall concept, they start getting excited about the legacy piece, where before I don't think they could see it because they couldn't see past their own challenge.
Yeah, and so this comes to the beginning with a purpose in mind on this too, and that there's 3 functions of money in retirement: income generation for our lifestyle, liquidity for emergencies, and then whatever's left over when we all pass away is our legacy to our heirs or wherever the money goes. And the connecting measurement point between pre-retirees and retirees is the income function. We're planning for wealth. Our wealth has to be planning for retirement income potential. When I get to retirement now, and I'm putting together my actual retirement income, liquidity, legacy plan as a package, I get to decide how much of the retirement income potential I've created for myself I want to have for my lifestyle. I get to say if I want all of it 100% and I don't want any legacy, I can do that. Or if I'm good with X amount of retirement income for lifestyle, and I can waterfall through 20% of my wealth potential, income potential to legacy, I can do that. So we spend a lot of time talking about how retirement income potential equals your overall wealth potential equals your legacy potential. Because you can always waterfall excess income potential you don't want for lifestyle through to legacy at retirement time as a choice if you want to. But really, what you want to be measuring in pre-retirement is making sure your retirement income potential is going to satisfy your lifestyle first, taking into account pensions that you could have that are usually smaller these days, Social Security, the fact that you won't have a mortgage payment anymore, let's say maybe you're not going to be saving any money out of your income. So you take into account all those factors to determine what you need to be at. And if you're looking for the ability to have legacy, and you're saying to yourself, well, I need 100 grand a year for lifestyle, just as a round number when I get to retirement. Maybe I want to make my retirement income potential 120 grand a year, so that at the time, if I want, I can waterfall through that quote unquote wealth potential of 20 grand a year extra income potential through to legacy in different ways when I see fit when I get there. But it's all connected. It's all the same dollars, and it's all one wealth potential. So for everybody out there, when you measure your retirement income potential, you're measuring your wealth potential. You can waterfall that through to legacy if you want.
And if you want to spend it all, you can do that too, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of it, is that there are choices. So I think we're kind of coming up on time. So is there anything, Jason, that you want to share with our audience, or anything that we should have covered that we didn't touch on?
I think the moral of the story is everybody take the time and make it a priority to get yourself a true retirement income plan in place where you're measuring what the outputs are down the road of your retirement income plan in full, and measuring how much to save and where to put it. Make sure you know that with the most efficient strategies. Don't just think an investment plan that you might have is actually a full retirement income plan. Make sure you actually are measuring it and putting it together fully to make those decisions with it.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback on that and just say thanks, because from a standpoint of legacy, I don't know if you feel it or if you get to see it or you get a sort of a glimpse of it, but I know you guys you and your dad and the team behind you have been working on this this is not an overnight success. It's not like you built this 5 minutes ago when we're talking about it. You guys have been producing this and working on this and doing conferences and training and helping us numbskulls that are thick-headed get it past our brain so that we can get it past to clients, right, for a long time. But from a legacy standpoint, I hope you kind of get a sense of what you're doing, not just for our careers, because I think it's we are just the conduits for the information to help clients, but for clients' lives, right, for being able to help them income-wise and help them create their own legacy. And you get to be, sort of a couple of parts removed from that, but you get to be a part of that. So I hope I hope you feel some of that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. I appreciate you guys having me here today and all the work you guys do and the great stuff you're doing with your clients. Keep it up.
Well, thank you so much. You make it easy for us. Thanks for doing all the hard work. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right.
Thanks,
Well, guys,
Jason.
if you are looking to track us down, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. It is at The Wealth Woman, and I am also on LinkedIn. And Eric, where can I find you?
I'm Economics with Eric, same place, Instagram and Facebook. And then can they find you anywhere, Jason?
Good question.
They find you through us, maybe?
Yes, that would be good. Find me through you guys.
That's absolutely perfect. Well, I think that's the end of our show today. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Jason.